Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Histories in Miniatures video, where I'm going to be talking about the artillery during the Napoleonic Wars. If you haven't, I suggest watching the other videos. This is kind of a little mini-series I'm doing. It kind of sort of covers some things I hope you sort of know by this point, so it kind of helps me just continue with the flow. During the 1700s, the normal way a cannon was created was in parts, and then you'd kind of fuse them together. I think it was about 1740s or 1760s when the Dutch devised a way of creating a single cast cannon. This meant the whole barrel, the whole metal big cannon thing was created in one mould. Now this had a massive benefit on multiple levels. First level, it made the casts more accurate and it let them kind of reduce windage. You didn't have to worry about putting things together. So you just had a more effective shot because the cannons were just single mould. They were much better things. Excellent point number two. They were more efficient to make. It's much easier to make a single mould of something than it is a few moulds and then piecing them together. It cut out steps in production, which again allowed production to be more efficient. A more efficient production means more cannons. Cannons are great. You need more cannons. And the biggest and most effective point about this change in artillery was the fact that you could make them lighter and still shoot the same size ball. It's not exactly accurate here, so don't shoot me to pieces if I'm slightly off here, but the average weight of a cannon kind of dropped by about half, so it was twice as easy to kind of move around and lumber. So this allowed you to be a lot more manoeuvrable with your artillery. You got to kind of engage units in the battle. Artillery came in two forms. You'd have foot artillery and horse artillery. They kind of are sort of self-explanatory. Foot artillery was pushed around by people on foot. Horse artillery was kind of attached to limbers and carted around by horses, and your whole artillery crew would normally be mounted on horses. Your horse artillery was very effective at redeploying on the battlefield. The French particularly were incredibly good at redeploying their horse artillery to where it needed to be. Your foot artillery was a bit slower, but again it could still be manoeuvred and redeployed. All artillery had the problem of being quite inaccurate initially. Once you fired the shot, the thing would pull back, so you had to realign it every time. So this did sort of cut down the amount of time it took to fire a shot. However, with the general increase in lightness of the artillery, you could move it around and actually do stuff. And you did see damage from artillery to infantry and cavalry on an unprecedented scale. This had not been seen before. The effective use of artillery during the Napoleonic Wars was a massive psychological edge that the French had initially and got adopted by all the rest. It was something that people didn't do. The average formation of artillery would be referred to as a battery, and your average battery would have about 6 cannons, sometimes a couple of howitzers attached to it. In the early days of the war, they were quite small sizes, they're normally about 6 to 12 pounds, and then the later years of the war, they got a bit bigger, but still kind of 12 was the optimal because it was the right sort of size to move around and do stuff. Heavier cannons were normally a bit more elite and normally reserved, again, for siege type attack and a siege type defense. Napoleon himself had the Grand Battery, which was a big battery, and he liked to stick all his artillery in a spot and get it to pound away at something and then change target and then pound away again. He didn't want to split them up and have a small group here and a small group here. He wanted to make them big, effective fighting units that could do a lot of damage. And again, this is where in the early days where I spoke about tactics combining elements in Napoleonic Wars, this is where you see that, because your opponents have got infantry regiments coming towards you. You've got your artillery. Now, the infantry are marching in column, so they're slightly easier to hit. You start opening fire on them. However, they start skirmishing, so they're getting harder to hit now, and it's a lot more inefficient. So you get some cavalry to move up. The cavalry scare the infantry stop advancing, the infantry form square. Your cavalry don't even need to engage the infantry at this point, and I'll discuss this a bit more in the cavalry side of things, but your cavalry have effectively neutralised that threat. The infantry are now in square. Your cavalry can peel off and do something else. Your artillery have got this nice juicy target sitting there. And this is kind of joint tactics, and then this square of infantry is getting pounded away by artillery, and you can bring your infantry in to take them, to manoeuvre, to push them out of the way, to scare them off, sort of thing. This is unit tactics 101. This is combination tactics. This is ideal scenario. This is ideal battlefield conditions, and they were never ideal battlefield conditions. But for the first time, artillery could be deployed on the battlefield effectively. Artillery could be manoeuvred on the battlefield effectively, and artillery was combined into big units to cause big damage effectively alongside the use of infantry and cavalry. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!